Hello and welcome back to Mulch. It's Rebecca from Silver Grey Foliage and the Flower Farming Business School. How are you? It is second-ish, third-ish week in February. We are in week 7 of the Flower Farming Business School. I am feeling very, very happy to be sat looking out at mountains and trees and sunshine. It's unseasonably warm where I am at the moment, in France on holiday, for half term with my kids. Like, it is 12 to 15 degrees. It is very, very warm as far as I'm concerned. And I know that it's not so warm at home. In fact, it's been an incredibly cold February. So I'm enjoying the sunshine and the extra vitamin D. How are you? I hope wherever you are that you're wrapped up warm. If you're further south, then I hope that the sun is, just easing your joints a little bit. I really do think that February is a funny season, but before I get that far, there wasn't an episode last week. I took some of my own medicine, and as we tried to finish off bed making and seed sowing, our first round, and prepare for a break, I just felt like and the business school, that takes my priority every single time. Something had to go last week, and so, as I often did last year, I just gave myself a break, and there was no episode of Mulch. I am back this week. I'm already bounding with energy. I'm desperate to get back into my field. However, this week has really given me a chance to reflect, and to think about where we are in the year. Like, February seems to have raced into my world, and I feel like if I cracked a tiny whip, it'll be over in less than a week. I really find February to be funny. As a flower farmer, I find it to be funny because the gears are cranking up. Like, we're all looking around, and it's like the beginning of a race, like in a swimming gala. Like, I was never a swimmer. I'm still not a swimmer. I'm a kind of leisurely kind of breaststroker. But when you did those races at school, or if you are a swimmer, you know what it's like when you've got off the race blocks and you've started in the race and you're kicking your hardest already, and you're doing your best strokes and putting in all that technique and practice that you've been thinking about over the winter months. And you start to look up and look around as you take a breath, and you can't work out whether you're doing well enough. And I feel like February is the first time that happens in flower farming land. I think the reason that it happens is because we're looking in the wrong place. And when I say that we're looking in the wrong place, I mean that we're looking around us at what we can easily see, which is usually some form of social media or other people's newsletters, which are only sharing the parts of people's flower farming worlds that they wish to share. And so the answers are not around us when we look around. And that makes it even more difficult to work out whether we're in the right place for us at the moment in February on our flower farms. So what do we do? Before I get on to my answers about what we do, I was asked the other day how many meters squared it took to grow our 120,000 stems last year. And I really struggled. In fact, I didn't answer the question because I think growing, feeding, soil, spacing, netting, corralling, cutting, and all of that. We don't do a lot of teaching about any of those things here at Silver Grey Foliage. And that's mainly because I feel like there's an awful lot of people out there doing it already. Yes, they're doing it in their own way. Yes, their way is different to our way, but there are a lot of growers out there doing it. And so I deliberately focus on and teach and talk a lot about how we manage the business elements and how we manage ourselves to make them business successful. Because this is something that I feel that we do in a different way. Now, I think I might rectify this, potentially around autumn, but for now, I think that the question really doesn't mean anything, or because none of us should be, and I all know how much I hate the word should, aiming to copy or emulate how others create their stems, or incomes from their meters squared. And there are definitely more stems that I could have eked out of our space, because we do farm quite intensively. And equally, on the kind of meterage that we grow on, you could definitely cut fewer stems. So it's not really a helpful question. What would be more helpful is, how do we feed our soil? How do we plant our flowers? How do we cut them? How do we protect them from the pests? Those sort of questions give you a better idea as to how we get our stem count than the physical meterage. Bearing in mind that the first year that I would say we were profitable, we cut 80,000 stems. That was our third year. And in terms of physical acreage, that was on less than a third of an acre, which really isn't that much. So my opinion is that in our growing business, we are aiming to reach over time our own goals, needs, and business dreams. And when I say over time, I mean that the businesses that I really admire, the businesses that are really successful and you can see are growing year on year, have built that over time. There are very few flower farmers who haven't had significant prior investment or significant funds to be able to, and time to be able to inject crazy amounts of money in to the foundations and infrastructure that reach a sustainable income, net income, so after expenses, in less than 4 to 5 years. It's a steady. And that's the same thing that is really difficult to see when we're looking around at the beginning of the race in February. We're missing those bits of the jigsaw that have happened quietly over winter, those thoughts, those kind of notes in journals, those kind of reviews of the past 4 or 5 years that people have had, rather than just what people are doing now. So the information that we get is incomplete. And that's why it's so important to be mindful of where you're at with your business and what you need to be doing right now with that question that I've posed right at the beginning. So the title of today's podcast is, Am I Growing Enough? It's a crazy question, because it's one that as a flower farmer, I know that we're always going to feel like the answer is no. But actually the answer might not be no if we just take a moment to hold our horses and to steady the reins. So I want to share my advice on the thoughts and the kind of reflections that I've been doing this week on how to temper that question and reach a useful answer. How to temper that question and reach a useful answer. I'm also going to refer back to the episode a couple of weeks ago. So I did a review of the Flower Farmers, Flowers from the Farm conference that happened the back end of January. And one of the things that I commented on was Kim Fleming, who is the owner and founder of Marston Farm Girl. I really admire her business. I did present some challenges about the way that she collects her data or the way that she manages her staff. But I really admire her business. And one of my take-homes from listening to her and seeing what she shared was about being more American. So many of you will have seen in our social media that we have been creating new beds, which was going to happen anyway. There was a plan, there was compost and manure already bought and identified in our budget, so it was going to happen anyway. But we've added a few extra within our budget so that I can really expand and use the space that we have to the best of its ability. So that does increase our meterage, but it's merely an expansion by probably 4 to 8 beds on what we were already going to do. So I'm just putting that in there because I know that some of you listen every week, and so giving context to what I've shared already, I don't want you to say or to feel like I'm suggesting that you do one thing when I'm doing something totally different, because that's really hypocritical and really not helpful. Okay, so the first question that I have been asking myself is, does your growing plan give you flowers for as long a season as you would like. So by this I mean, do you have a succession of focals and fillers and foliage that will take you from wherever you want your kind of business flower growing year to start, or wherever you've planned for it to start, through until the end? Because we all know that often flower growers get till kind of mid-August, potentially the beginning of September, and then everything just plops out. And so have you planned the successions that will get you to a finish at a time in September, October, or wherever it is in your part of the world that works for you? So if not, the answer is, well, it's probably a little bit late to be planning more for early on in the season. But is it possible or reasonable to aim for more at the later end of your season, so that the end is complete with all your bouquets and your weddings, rather than petering out because you don't have the supporting acts to go with dahlia or chrysanthemums that you're planning to grow? So that's my first question. Do I have enough to take me through the season that I want? Already in the planning, already paid for. Number 2, if I decide that the answer is no, and if I decide that I want to grow more, do you have the space that's already cultivated and ready to grow on? And if you don't have the space, and by that I mean beds that are prepared, do you have the money and or the time to invest in cultivating more growing space? And if you have the space, or you can create the space, do you have the time and the energy to do it? I really am coming back to that kind of time and energy part, which goes beyond having the physical space and goes beyond having the money, because the work that we do, especially once we get to peak season, is tiring. And so adding more to that now, doing more in this particular time of the year, means that you're sapping some of your energy that will be of benefit later in the year. Okay? Listen to Sophie Cliff if you want ways to renew and refresh your energy. That was last episode 6. The final thing is there capacity in your marketing to increase your sales? So if you have decided that actually you do have the space that's either cultivated or that you're able to cultivate, and you have the money to do that, and you have the time and the energy, do you have a planned sales output that you're already working towards? Because if the answer is no, there's no purpose in growing more if you haven't worked out how you're going to sell it. It's just a waste of your energy, and actually potentially really disheartening if you have flowers left in the field. So just have a think about those things. If you're thinking, I really think I should be growing more. Okay. So question number 3. And I'm really mindful that my biggest mistake, when I say our biggest mistake, I mean my biggest mistake every single year, is that I spend too much money on plants and seeds. Every year I do this, and I have got better year on year on year at reining myself in, at spending less, at only buying what I need. But actually, when you look at the numbers, we do have a good amount coming in. Every year I think, well, there'd be more in my pocket if I had spent less, if I'd have wasted less. Okay, so in season 1 I did a podcast on deciding how to grow what you're going to grow, but actually the baseline of that is, should the money stay in my pocket, or should I be spending it on other things to put in the field? And so the question is, do I actually need to just spend less so that our net profit, so that's what comes in minus my expenses, is higher, rather than working harder by growing more and cutting more to earn more income just so that I can spend more of it? Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, it's not always the case that we need to spend more or invest more. Sometimes we just need to spend less and work a bit smarter. Okay, finally, as ever, I am going to refer you back to your business plan, because what you've set out to achieve this year is incredibly important. But just because you've written a framework or a business plan that says that you intend to do X doesn't mean that you can't go back to it 2 months in and think, actually, I want to do a little bit more. Or the reality is that my life has changed, or I'm realizing the physical requirements of that, and that I actually want to do just a little bit less, so that I make sure that that little bit less that I do means that everything I'm doing is done better and is setting me in a better place for future years. Okay? Don't have to do everything just because it's written down. Now, I'm not saying that you can go back and go, actually, no, I'm just actually going to grow 10 bouquets for the rest of the year because actually the rest of it is too much like hard work. I am not giving you permission to go back and go, I'm just not doing this. Okay, if you set your heart on growing a flower farm, it's hard work. You're going to have to put in the effort. And that is a challenge. But sometimes we challenge ourselves too much. Okay, just going back to what I said at the beginning, the businesses that I most admire, the flower farming businesses that I most admire, have grown steadily across the first 5, 6, 7 years. And if I'm entirely honest, the ones that I know the inner workings of have also grown steadily, grown in terms of their net income, and they've been really clear about what their limits are, so where they want to get to, rather than growing for the sake of growing. And I am also really mindful of that as we are growing our business again this year. Where do I want or need to get to? Because it's often not as far away as you think. Okay, I feel like the end of February is the first time when we really need to kind of gird our loins as flower farmers. It's when we need to not get overexcited because we love what we do, and we just need to hold the boat steady and steer our way into the waters. So before you think about growing more and spending more, just stop and have a think about a few of the things in this podcast, because it may not be necessary. For those of you who are wanting a wee update on the Flower Farming Business School online, we are into week 7, and this is the first week that we're talking about terms and conditions. Now, terms and conditions, as far as I'm concerned, are always there to support our customers and also to make my life or your life as a flower farmer easier. This week we're talking about weddings. And I'll be sharing more about the business school online in the next couple of weeks as we start to prepare for quarter 2. Yes, we're heading towards quarter 2. The year is chugging along, and that will start at the back end of March, early April. So if you're keen to join us, there's a growing list of people who are on a kind of waiting list to hear the details first about how to join and what it's going to look like in quarter 2. There's a link to join up or to sign up to that in our bio. If you sign up to that list, it is only about the Flower Farming Business School. It won't be any additional emails. If you're already on our email list, you still need to sign up there if you want to hear first, because that's where I'll go first and everyone else will come afterwards. Thank you for listening. I hope that wherever you are, especially if you're amidst half term, that you are okay, that you are kind of steering the good ship through the busy times. And I just want you to know that I am thinking of you, because I am in the same world as you. I'll be back next Thursday with another episode all about flower farming in practice. Until then, Rebecca.